Welcome, Iowans for Freedom. We have the privilege today of having with us Senator Jim Carlin. I would love to give him a long introduction, but I'm going to let him kind of introduce himself and tell us a little bit about who he is, what his mission is, how he's living out of his car these days.
Yeah,
All
living
right.
out of his car for the right reasons.
Right,
I do
right.
have, I do have a job. Hey, thanks a lot for having me.
Sure.
Um, freedom is my reason. Freedom is my why in this thing. Freedom's the reason why I decided to get in this race. I'm a grandfather, and when you get to be a grandfather, your perspective on things changes. Certainly, my perspective on what's going on presently and how it relates to their future is a big part of it. The question I asked myself last year, are my grandkids free in 20 years? Oliver, for me, the answer to that was no. And it's a responsibility and a duty to pass that torch to the next generation. Reagan said as much. He said, the loss of freedom is never more than one generation away. We're there. And I don't think I've ever in my lifetime seen an assault like on freedom like we're presently having right now. So that was the impetus. And then, if Chuck ran again, I wasn't going to run. And then we saw the election, and the lawyer in me was waiting for subpoenas to be served. Something to be done to take a look at the data, at the evidence in the election. When you lose 19 or 18 out of 19 bellwethers, you lose Ohio, you lose Florida, you lose Iowa, your opponent picks up 12 million votes, you lose 14 House seats. When I do the math in my head, I'm like, whether there was fraud or not, the statistical probability of those things coalescing tell me that you lost. And as I look at that, I'm like, okay, well, then that should have triggered a duty by our legislators to have an authentic audit of the election. And they had 2 months to do it, and nothing ever happened. And then, the people I went to the Trump rallies with, the good, freedom loving, kind Trump people. I'm one of them.
Right.
There's not a bad one in the bunch there may have been a couple of people at that rally on January 6th that were out of line and maybe 10 or 15, or I don't know the actual numbers, but they were in no way representative of the people I went to those rallies with, who care about freedom, who care about the future of freedom, who care about their grandchildren. Not at all. And some of those people are being held to this day without due process of law or without even being charged. So, Oliver, we've never seen anything like this. And now we're talking about mandating vaccinations that have a real risk.
Right.
So,
yeah. And what do you think about that? Well, I know what you think about it. I saw you speak on it at the
right.
legislative committee hearing. You
Mhm.
spoke on it about how it would affect employees. You spoke about how it was unconstitutional. I was impressed with that. And, and I know you didn't vote for the bill. So yeah, tell us about that.
Well, I didn't vote for a vaccination passport ban because it really, in reality, didn't operate as a ban. Specifically excluded healthcare, which to me, we all have to go to the doctor's office sooner or later. We have to visit relatives. A lot of doctors and nurses around the state, clinicians who've been in practice for years, refuse to take that vaccination because clinically they see the risks associated with it and they're not going to do it. And they, some of them have been in there with their groups 10, 20, 30 years, and they're being forced out of jobs. And that was very foreseeable. And that's why Dennis Guth had drafted a ban on employer mandates. And he asked me to floor manage it. I said, sure. It didn't get to the floor. And so the overriding concern for me was, are we going to force vaccinations for patients, for expectant mothers, for people who, have comorbidities that are susceptible to that kind of vaccination. And there's so many unanswered questions about the risks down the road. I mean, we don't have anywhere near enough data to define this thing. And I personally have lost 2 friends. Now, they were older, but they died within weeks of the vaccination and they were otherwise healthy. Both of them, blood clots to the brain, which is one of the, which is a known risk of this vaccination. And, I do some medical malpractice. Where's the informed consent here? Did you know, Oliver, a letter had been sent around to physicians telling them not to discuss the risk aspects of the vaccination or face a peer review hearing?
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, they follow protocol now and they don't really, it doesn't seem like they care for their patients as much as they used to.
Well, informed consent isn't a duty you can just ignore. People have a right to know what the risks of a medical procedure are, what the risks of a vaccination are. And, you and I both know that those VAERS database numbers are not up to date, but we have 12,000 deaths. We have over 45,000 serious injuries documented now. And I think that number has been static since 6 months ago. So who knows where the number is now? I think
they're not up. Not only are they not up to date, Harvard did a study and they found that only 1% of adverse events were reported.
Yeah.
Doctors are being told not to report adverse events. People don't know how to do it. So it's severely underreported.
Yeah. So, to your point, we don't have the reality of what's going on out there. And if there's a risk, there should be a choice.
That's for sure.
So
where does Grassley stand on all this?
Well, he has said that he's in favor of a vaccination passport to board a plane, and which was pretty remarkable. He said that, I don't know, probably 3-4 months ago. I don't know if his position on that has since changed, but he said, if you don't want to get vaccinated, you need to find another way to travel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which, here's my, we're talking about 0.4% of people that die from COVID. 70% of those people have significant comorbidities. And we're going to allow it to redefine our whole way of life in America. I have not researched the actual numbers of, deaths in the US pre and post COVID, but I don't think that there's much, if any, of a distinction in terms of the number of actual deaths, which is not to say I don't care about the people who've died. Of course I do. Every single life is precious. But when you start redefining who you are as a country, when you start taking away freedom because of, some risk, I think you're making a bad trade. And safety for freedom is seldom, if ever, a good trade. And unfortunately, fear is the currency of tyranny. Tyrants learned a long time ago, if you can make people afraid, you can take away their freedom. And that's just what we're seeing.
And we've seen it over and over and over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think
Patriot Act.
Yeah, the Patriot Act. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
The minute something happens that invokes fear in the public, and then the media exacerbates that.
They inflame it.
Yeah, they inflame it. They start to take away freedoms to protect people.
Uh-huh.
So Grassley, how did he rate on the John Birch Society Freedom Index?
Well, that's a good question, because what I understand, out of a possible 100, he got a 20.
Wow.
So if your concern is freedom and the preservation of freedom, he's not your guy. He's not going to fight. And I think the issue in this primary is, who do you think is going to fight for you? Do you think Chuck
Mhm.
Grassley is? I don't think he is. And the reason why I think that is the position he's taken on red flag laws. It's another freedom issue, Oliver. Red flag laws means if you accuse somebody of being crazy, their Second Amendment right is taken away without due process of law.
Wow.
Yeah. So, your Second Amendment basically means nothing with a mere accusation with no due process. And the thing is these things, you learn in this process that these things are paths. They're not destinations. They're like steps down a path. And if you look at where we're going right now, the things that have been ignored by the political class, which largely facilitated these things by making deals with lobbyists. We lost our manufacturing base in the last 20 years to China. They manufacture 90% of the world's drugs. That is a national security risk. We're at their mercy. Where was Chuck there? We have $600 billion worth of intellectual property stolen from us every year. If they know when you and I mentioned having an infected toenail the other day. This will sound funny, but it's really not. The next day, Oliver, I get an ad on my phone for infected toenail cream.
Oh,
And I see
know.
that and I'm like, are you kidding me?
That
I wasn't
happens
even
all
on
the
my phone.
time. That happens all the time.
Yeah, it does happen all the time. So what does that tell us? That
Right.
tells us that everything we say, our private lives, every word, if that phone's anywhere near you, it's being listened to. So why can't we get rid of Chinese spies when they know when I have an infected toenail? Why?
Exactly. Yeah.
And they basically stole the technology for a Ticonderoga class destroyer, our fighter jets. They're stealing technology all the time. They're on our college campuses, stealing technology, stealing research. I don't know that they could invent a piece of bubble gum without our help, because they don't foster individual creativity.
No.
They're good. They're great at copying stuff. They're not so much at individually creating and coming up with ideas that nobody else has come up with, because they don't foster the significance of the individual in their culture, and we do. And that's why we have a much better country than China. Around here, we let people have self-determination. They don't over there. And unfortunately, it looks like we're on a path to becoming more like them than who we really are.
And that's the truth. I mean, in some cities around the country, they're having to have an app on their phone to show their vaccine status to enter venues. And that's one short step from having a credit system and having
It is.
socialized system where they can track you and control you and
Yeah.
cut
Well,
your funds off.
Yeah. Electronic currency.
Yep.
What does that mean? That means the government can take whatever it wants from you. You're going to be incredibly vulnerable. Right now, the Chinese have a police state technologically. In our country, we basically let private business do the same thing. And if they flip a switch and they decide that they're going to garner whatever information from your private life they want, they can take it. We're not that far from, at least technologically, we're not that far from them. And that should concern us. I mean, our kids are being conditioned to being controlled.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I always wondered is, and there were a couple schools where kids did rise up, but most of them just complied with being masked all day. And, when I was a kid, I had to sit in at 17 because, they took away our breaks and our ability to opt out of semester tests, and they took our bathroom doors off our stalls in the boys' bathroom. Yeah. So we had a sit-in, most of the school was there. We were there all day and they met our demands. But kids these days, it doesn't seem like they have that fight within them to go against the system.
We need that. That's why we need people on our school boards. Last year, I ran a couple of bills that were kind of controversial. They weren't the least bit controversial to me. I had a bathroom bill that I took a lot of heat for, and they're like, you're a hater. I'm like, no, I'm not. I just don't think my granddaughter should have to share a restroom with a man.
Right.
Simple as that.
Right.
Little girls being terrified by men in restrooms is a bad idea.
That's common sense, right?
Common sense. Well, apparently not for some school board people, some liberal school board people. I had another bill that my secretary came to the office one day, and her 4-year-old son had a teacher's aide that was a drag queen. Now, a drag queen, a transvestite drag queen. I don't know if he had, the surgery into things. I don't think so. But since when do parents not have a right to know that?
Right.
Their 4-year-old is around somebody who's very hyper hypersexualized in demeanor.
Right.
And they have no say in that because, we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings.
Yeah.
No, as a parent, you have a right to raise your kid up morally, consistent with your values. That's your right. And you need to be notified. And I had a bill that said, look, if there's any gender identity stuff, the parents get written notice, and you have to get written signed consent from the parents if you're going to have any material like that at all. And so you just see this gradual undercurrent on the
And that
freedom of
probably
parents
didn't pass,
to raise
did
their
it?
kids.
That probably didn't make it through the House, did it?
It didn't get to the education committee, neither did the other one.
And that kind of blows me away. I mean, one of my first experiences with this process was really the vaccine passport ban bill. And it so kind of shocked me with how many people that I thought were representing me, conservative Republicans, were saying, no, businesses should have the right to tell somebody they have to have an experimental medical treatment for employment. And that shocked me. And could you explain that? I don't understand that.
I don't buy into that either. I'm a free market capitalist. I've always thought very highly of Milton Friedman.
Right.
I don't think free market capitalism extends to the point where you can mandate that somebody have a vaccination against their will when there are attendant risks to keep a job. For something with, they're actually showing that for young people, the risk of the vaccination is far greater than the actual disease itself. And so you're subjecting people to risk that would never die from COVID against their will so that they can keep a job. And, there's studies out there that show that myocarditis and blood clots are killing young people. So no, I don't think your free market notions of businesses being able to call the shots on that thing extend that far to where somebody's individual constitutional right to self-determination and bodily autonomy are just pushed by the wayside like they don't exist. That's not how it should shake out. I'm cautiously optimistic that the Supreme Court will rule that way.
Against Biden's, I guess, what do I want to say? Tyrannical mandates, executive orders.
I don't know. I mean, of course, we were wrong about Obamacare till we found out who Justice Roberts is. But I guess we're going to find out.
Yeah, and there have been some businesses that have come out and publicly stated we are not going to follow those mandates if they, no matter what, and our legal team is on board. We are ready to protect our employees' rights.
Well, it's a civil rights issue.
Yeah.
And, if somebody mandates that you get a vaccination, I would assert a civil rights. Uh, I would assert my civil right to freedom of religion, and I would request a religious exemption. And I don't think I need to be subjected to a 4-hour examination of my knowledge of the Bible to prove that my religious exemption is authentic. Um, and if they say no, we don't believe you, we don't believe that you sincerely hold that view, then I'd say, okay, then we're going to the Civil Rights Commission. And people need to start asserting those things in mass to make it harder. And I don't know what the employer's response to that is going to be, but we cannot roll over and make it easy for them.
Right.
That's the
We've
thing.
talked, yeah, we've talked to the Civil Rights Commission and to the director, and I mean, for a few weeks now. And they have a meeting coming up the 25th to, they'll have several things on their agenda, but one of them is, um, how this all affects a folks' civil rights and what the code is and what could I maybe potentially be changed to further protect our civil rights when it comes to bodily autonomy and medical freedom. What do you think about that? I mean, what do you think about the code as it is now and making a minor change to protect people further?
I would absolutely be in favor of something like
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
that. I would
There
absolutely
you
be
go.
in favor of that. You have to assert boundaries to keep them.
Right.
And we have not stood for our boundaries well on free speech. And if you don't fight for your boundaries of individual self-determination, you will lose them. And if we can assert a boundary and say, you cannot force me to be vaccinated against my will as a matter of my faith, I cannot in good conscience inject something into my body to do it harm that I think could do it harm, to subject my body to risk, because my body is the temple of the Lord.
Right.
And I'm not going to let you do that. And I think that is a legitimate expression of your civil rights. I view it that way.
For sure. Um, how do you think how do you think the process should move forward? I mean, we have a special session coming up October 5th, and I know it's to, approve or discuss or the redistricting. I saw the map that was proposed. Um, what do you think? Well, I know that, I mean, I'd heard that in the House caucus there was a lot of discussion. What do you think the chances are, or what do you think the process should be to further along these protections for our freedoms from these mandates?
Um, it is getting discussion in my caucus among each other, lots of it. You know, um, I I text my colleagues and they're my friends, and we talk about it actually quite a bit. Uh, I requested 2 bills, and I'm going to be requesting a third. I requested a bill to, again, ban vaccination mandates. I also requested a bill that if you have had COVID and you test positive to the antibodies, you don't have to be vaccinated. That's, is that, I'm just looking for a path for people to avoid that vaccination. And the other thing that I think is a big issue is, let's say I'm not getting vaccinated and they fire me. I think those people should be eligible for unemployment benefits. If you're being forced against your will and you say no, if there's liability immunity for pharmaceutical companies and liability immunity for employers, And the only thing that can happen to you if you try to assert your right to bodily autonomy is to get fired and have nothing to fall back on. Who has all the leverage? You have no leverage. None.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so I know these battles, Oliver, are won and lost with leverage. So, I would encourage people, make them fire you, assert a civil rights exemption to the vaccination. And if they don't want to recognize it, file the claim in the Civil Rights Commission. Get together with your fellow employees. I mean, this thing is going to create massive workforce issues around the state. Right now the bed space at hospitals has declined, and it's not because of the number of COVID cases. It's because they're losing staff right and left right now. I'm sure you know that, but
Yeah.
we already have workforce issues.
There's a medical freedom group that popped up that already has, I think, 5,000 members, and they've had a dozen protests outside of hospitals that are well attended, and I read a survey of like 5 million people on their education level and their hesitation towards these shots. And the most educated were the most hesitant, the PhDs, and then the least educated were the second most hesitant. So people with a high school diploma or less. So people that know how to follow their gut, people that really know how to read studies and follow the science, and then the in-betweeners were the least hesitant.
Well, whether you're the PhD or the guy who knows how to turn a wrench, your rights should be respected.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's as simple as that.
Exactly. And whether it's philosophical or religious or, hey, we need to wait and see what happens, it shouldn't matter what your reasoning is.
No, it shouldn't. Our government was created to protect rights, not take them away.
Exactly.
That was our foundation. In this country, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is something we're going to get behind and defend. And, this, this is the whole purpose for what you do. We're on a path where we're heading directly away from freedom. We're heading away from faith. And those were the two things that defined us at our inception, because faith says there's a dignity to every life. And once you take away freedom, you lose humanity, because you stop seeing people as individuals. When you say, you can't defend yourself, you can't keep what you earn, you can't say what you think, you can't even think what you think. We're going to try to control that too. When you have tech companies that can censor a sitting president, come on. When you can censor a sitting president, it's gotten out of hand. And the weaponizing of big tech to silence any free expression of ours is another huge issue that has not been, have you seen an authentic Senate or House committee on that issue? Did we ever see an authentic House or Senate committee on the election? No. Have we ever seen an authentic House or Senate committee on the existential threat of China? Three huge things, all of them huge threats to the freedom of our children and grandchildren. None of them are being paid any attention to right now by the political class that profits, whose main goal is to get reelected and not serve the people of this country. That's the problem.
Are you drinking coffee?
I am.
What kind
I'm
of
very
coffee do you
particular
like?
about my coffee.
We've
drink this
become coffee
coffee.
snobs. We get
I
ours
am.
at Corazon Coffee Roasters in Valley Junction.
Oh, okay.
Very
Try that
freedom
one.
loving place too.
Okay.
How about you?
I drink this stuff called Emerald's Big Bold Easy.
Okay.
It is amazing. It's the best tasting. It's not even close. It's actually ruined me, because now when I travel, I actually bring it with me, and I'm so enamored with the stuff that I literally tear open the little coffee envelopes and I fill it with my coffee and stick it in the little machine at the hotels I stay at, or sometimes I even bring a Keurig with me. So It's that good.
Is it a dark roast? It sounds
It
like
is.
it. Yeah,
It
that's what
is.
my wife and I love. We're dark roasters,
Yeah,
that's for
it's
sure,
delicious.
with
It's
nothing else
delicious.
in it.
Yeah, if they
Um,
ever take away my freedom of coffee, we're really,
yeah, there will be a revolt, a real
they're going to
revolt,
mandate that we all drink
right?
some. Yeah,
If they close down our liquor stores and take away our coffee, they're in trouble.
yeah,
The
then they'll,
essential businesses.
yeah, we could
Um,
get a lot of people upset with that.
you made the joke that you've been living out of your car. What's life like for you right now in, preparing for the primaries next June and getting, I mean, this is a big deal running for or
It
running
is.
against Grassley. He's been an institution, even though his freedom rating is 20 out of 100, and
Mhm,
he votes more, it's what it seems to be Democrat than Republican.
mhm.
Tell us
Well,
about that. What's your life like right now?
um, you have to drive to places that are three, sometimes 4 hours away. Next week, we're driving out to Clinton County and Scott County, and uh, um, it is, it's a lot of time in the car. And, it's not unusual to spend 7 hours in a car in a given day. Um, and getting back, I'm in the northwest corner of the state. I sure wish I lived in Des Moines right now,
I bet.
because if I did, it would certainly save a lot of road time. But um, after a while, you just accept that it is what it is, and you get used to driving across 80 and across 20, and um, you listen to books on CD, and I'm actually listening to a really good book now called Last Men Standing: Why Men Fight Hopeless Causes. You would love that.
Wow. Wow.
Anybody
Last
who
man
loves freedom
standing.
would absolutely love that book, Last Man Standing. I'm also listening to another book called Death by China.
Wow.
That, geez, if people had any idea how comprehensive their strategy is against us to take this country down through currency manipulation and everything that they do globally to own all the rare earth minerals that you need for so many things. And um, they have a far reaching strategy that if we don't come up with something to counteract it, you know, we're really, that we're really in trouble. And what else I find interesting as an aside, the only guy to ever fight or engage China, big government, or big tech was who?
Trump.
Trump.
Yeah.
Nobody else.
Exactly. I didn't love him
Yeah.
in 2016.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know if I should say this. I voted for Gary Johnson. I didn't
Okay.
I didn't like Trump or Clinton, but man, in
Yeah.
4 years, he started to turn this country around.
He did. He
And
really
by
did. I voted for
2000,
Ben Carson.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
By the last election, I mean, we were on a great trajectory, I believe.
Mhm. Well, I think the thing is those three things, China and big tech and big government, what are they about? They're about authoritarian control over our lives,
Yeah.
which means here's one man who stands up and fights for freedom. Sometimes you can know somebody better by who their enemies are than by who their friends are. So when I look at President Trump, I'm like, okay, China hates you. Big government Democrats and the political class in the Republican Party, they hate you and they don't stand up for you. And big tech hates them. They censor them. They try to shut down every platform that had anything good to say about them. So all three of those agents of tyranny that are authoritarian went out of their way to attack him. And you need to look at that.
Yeah, that speaks volumes.
It really does.
I do have a question for you. Why do you think I haven't heard him come out in favor of folks protesting mandates or really against mandates definitively? We saw Rand Paul's address saying, hey, this is
That was wonderful.
tyrannical, don't follow it,
Mhm.
but
Actually,
Trump's
I
kind
have
of
heard the
dodged it.
president.
Have you?
I have heard him say, I think you should be vaccinated, but I'm all about choice and
Okay.
freedom of choice. I have heard him say that twice.
Okay.
So he's not in favor of mandates.
It'll be
You know?
interesting to see what he has to say when he's here in Des Moines.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I I hope I get a chance to visit with him while he's here.
For sure. He'd be wise to
That's-
do that and support
Well,
you.
I've unabashedly supported him since day one
Yeah.
because he stands for our freedom and he has guts.
Yeah.
You know, there's just, I mean, you have to be incredibly brave to deal with the stuff he's had to deal with from those
That's-
three things. You have to be incredibly brave. I don't know if people realize what that required of him to be subjected to that, but that was incredibly brave. Still is. I mean, his enemies are many, and they'd love to kill him.
Yeah, he has thick skin. I think he has to, it's kind of like being a soccer referee, you have to have thick skin because you're always getting heckled. Something I've never really wanted to do. I've done it a few times. I've coached a lot, but I have respect for those guys that can take all that negative energy and heckling and just move forward and do their job,
You know, he just mocks him.
What's that?
He's a tough son of a gun.
Yeah.
The thing about him is he doesn't let anybody define him. Usually people in politics, the media can kind of lead him around by the nose.
Right.
And they never successfully were able to do that with him. And he would just call them for what they were and express it in a way that, everybody knew was true. And he'd just slam them. And I think that's why so many people love him the way they do.
Yeah. So many people love him and so many people hate him.
Yeah.
What advice do you give to, the Iowan right now? I know they, people that are being discriminated against, they need to file a civil rights complaint. But, we talk to folks about emailing their representatives, calling their representatives and all those things. And we hear from some representatives that they're hearing a lot from their constituents and some that they're not. How do we get folks to do that? I mean, how do we impress upon them how important that is? How important is it to you to hear from your constituents?
Oh, it's very important. But what also is, and you can send emails. You can, send comments and message them on Facebook.
Right.
I get messages on Facebook from people. The other thing I really want to see is what you're doing. I want to see grassroots organizations around the state mobilize and get numbers. You've got you guys, we've got Cultivated Patriots. We got the Cultivated Patriots in Ankeny. We've got the Informed Choice of Iowa ladies.
Yeah, we've got Sonia
We've
Swan.
got the Christian Patriots group up in Mason City. You got conservative coffee groups all around the state. You got the Mama Bears.
Yeah.
You got
they're awesome.
There's just a lot of so my other advice is, hey, connect to a group that you're aligned with that is already engaged in the process because they know how the game is played. I think there was a seminar a couple of days ago about
FACL. It's going on today. Foundation for Applied.
That's a great idea.
If
you can do that.
I've done that training, and
Sure.
Sonia Swan and Leslie Beck are putting that on today. They're hosting it.
That's wonderful stuff.
And they have a lot of people going. So that's kind of where leaders start to emerge, I think.
Yeah.
These groups are just growing dramatically. I mean, we have 3,500 people in our group and 1,000 people requested membership that our moderators are going through. We have 7 moderators vetting people. We have 80 posts and pending for people that want to speak out.
Mhm.
So that's heartening. And we've come together with some of the other groups like ICI and Informed Choice Iowa, or Informed Iowans for Informed Consent, um, and the medical freedom groups. And we're gonna be there at the Capitol the 5th to support you guys.
Good.
So we
Good.
expect a huge number of people.
That's another way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, when you guys show up at the Capitol,
Yeah.
I mean, that way your voice is heard. You're not just an email, but you're somebody on the ground in the building saying, hey, listen to me. And
It's
the more
important.
groups that we can get like that, I think the more the effect of the influence, because it puts pressure and leverage are the currency of the process.
For sure.
If you don't have big dollars, then you're going to have to find another route, another path to influence. And political coalitions are good.
Well, and Martin Luther
to bring
King
about
Jr.
more
proved
influence.
that.
What's that?
Martin Luther King Jr. proved that.
He did.
I mean, he said that there was no advance ever made in civil rights that wasn't from legal and direct action pressure.
Mm-hmm. That's how it gets done.
Yep.
Peaceful demonstration is a great way to do it. And then the sharing of information.
Yep.
Like what you do. And, these other groups around the state. I had an experience 10 years ago. And I had a client who was a dentist from Mexico. And she actually came here illegally. And she was sharp. She was smart. She had her act together. And she fled Mexico. And I said, you're not a dentist here. You're going to have to jump through a bunch of hoops to be a dentist here. Why'd you do what you did? And she said, the town that I lived in, the cartel took over.
Wow.
A cartel took over. And she said, suddenly people started to disappear. And then people started to conspicuously be murdered. And then one day, in my mind, I considered who'd been murdered and who had disappeared. And to her horror, she realized I'm on that list. They're going to get me. Because she was intelligent, educated, and she talked. And so what she learned from that was tyrants are afraid of free speech. They're afraid of unity. They're afraid of being exposed with truth. Our weapons are truth, unity, and speech. And we have to use the weapons of influence that the freedom of association, freedom of speech. We have to use our weapons in this fight to preserve freedom. And that was a real eye opener for me when I actually sat down and thought about, and isn't that exactly what's going on, Oliver?
It is. It is.
Control the content, control the speech, invade the privacy. That's way too much power.
Yes.
Way too much incursion.
Way too much power. And we can no longer sleep. We have to rise up, use our voices, do exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
Now is the time we have to draw the line in the sand. Otherwise, like you said, our grandkids aren't going to be free. Our kids aren't going to be free.
And they're going to know. They're going to know we didn't fight for them. And I don't care what it requires of me. I have my why in my life is little kids. And if you try to indoctrinate them or harm them or sexualize them when they're little, you and I are going to go.
And that's the
I will fight for them. And I mean, we the problem is, we don't like conflicts. We don't like uncomfortable disagreements. We're going to have to get over that. Jefferson said freedom requires vigilance, which basically means freedom is always going to be a fight. And if you've noticed, anytime we try to stand up for our boundaries, they fight us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
And they hope that you just submit, just submit to us so we get to define you. And no, you don't get to define me. God gets to define me. You don't get to define me. And that's just not something, like you say, now's the time. Now's the time, Oliver. We got to get serious about it and get after it and get engaged.
Yep. And people need that very same resolve. Our freedoms come from God. Our body was created by God. There's a Psalm 139, 13 through 14.
Yep.
For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full and well. We are perfectly and wonderfully made. We don't need all the extra stuff for protection.
Well, the fact that we all look and think differently tells me that there was a unique plan and purpose and destiny for each of us.
Yeah.
That needs to be brought to fruition to serve humanity itself. I think that's what God intended. And so if you try to have these platforms of mass forced conformity, you rob people of their destinies and their individual contribution and creativity to make. That's why nobody has ever knocked it out of the park like the United States. Economically, we raised the bar and standard of living, quality of life like no other nation in history because we let people be themselves. And that's what we need. That's what we have to stick to.
And you know what jumps out when you say that? I went to the bank yesterday, and my bank is requiring the tellers and their employees to wear masks. And I spoke with a woman that I've known for a long time because I've banked there for forever, and I was opening a new account. And I didn't recognize her. I didn't know who she was for the first 5 minutes of our conversation because she had this big black covering over her face, And then I finally realized that I thought, oh, that's so and so. But they rob you of your individuality.
They do. And how many times has somebody's smile just lifted you up?
Exactly. Yeah.
We're missing out on, the intimacy of a smile, a laugh, an embrace, all these great things. Some of the best things about being a human being is obviously our social interaction with each other. And, that gets diminished by something. I don't really believe masks have been proven to work. And
no,
there's a lot of data out there that says as much. And
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I could talk to you all day about freedom.
I've enjoyed it.
We're about, yeah.
Really
I did see
appreciate
a
it.
flyer. It's you're invited to a barbecue meet and greet with Senator Jim Carlin, Republican candidate for Senate, and it's Saturday, September 25th, from 3 to 6 p.m.
It's at Ernie Rudolph's.
Okay.
And you hold on a second, I can give you the address.
Yeah, I've got it right here, Jim. 20,379 352nd place in Earlham, Iowa.
Earlham, Iowa. I know that sounds like it's on the other side of the world, but his address is actually pretty close to Interstate 80.
Yeah, it's not far, just a couple exits to the west.
Yeah. Do you know Tana? Tana Gertz. So she's going to be there, and she was like President Trump's. She was on The Apprentice, but she was like his spokesperson in the state of Iowa, and she's going to be there. And man, that lady's a firecracker.
Okay.
She is fun to listen to, and she's going to be there. And if you want to, I'd love to meet anybody who wants to come to this, and I know Tana would as well. And Ernie and his wife Linda are wonderful people, and I'm sure they're going to feed us good, and we're going to have a great time.
Oh, that sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. I probably have a soccer game to coach, but I think I can get over the. Actually, and maybe in Adel, I could probably skate right over afterwards. So
Yeah,
I'll promote that, and let's try to get Iowans for Freedom and whoever's watching this, try to make it out to see Senator Carlin. I mean, Senator Carlin's the type of guy that will call you at 9 o'clock at night to see how that email request was going. I had emailed Senator Carlin about my kids being discriminated against in college for not wanting the shot, and he followed right up. He called me. I was so impressed with that, with your availability and your willingness to interact with folks.
how'd your son make out with that, Oliver?
He's having to test twice a week
Oh,
because he won't get the shot, and he's having to test 24 hours before the game, even though, and it's still discrimination. It's if he were to come into contact with somebody with so that's tested positive, he would have to quarantine. Kids that have had the shot don't have to. So even though they can get and spread the virus, they're
right.
drawing the fine
Yeah,
lines between the
that
vax
makes
and
no
unvax.
sense at all.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. Well, I do need to go, but I watched the ball game, or I was going to watch a ball game like a month and a half ago. The Yankees Red Sox game got canceled. And the reason why the game got canceled was 3 Yankee pitchers who were all vaccinated, all had COVID.
Wow.
So they had to cancel the game.
Sure.
So, we don't even have any studies on the effectiveness of the thing to prevent getting COVID,
Yeah.
and no, is he going to assert a civil rights claim
We
or
may,
defense?
that's something
Yeah.
we're going to talk a little bit more to the Civil Rights Commission
Yeah.
about.
Well, we got to
And
find a way to help out our doctors and nurses.
yeah, for
We
sure.
really do. And our meat packers at Tyson and our bankers and anybody else out there who doesn't want to do it, who's been forced to do it against their will. We got to stand up for those guys.
Yep. And so, yeah, I think we kind of want to leave you guys with a message that you join these groups, show up to the events, show up to the rallies, email your representatives, file civil rights complaints. Don't stand for any of it. Make your employer fire you. File for an exemption first, right?
That's couldn't have said it better, Oliver. That you nailed it. Those are the
All
things
right.
you need to be doing.
Any final words, Jim?
Stay engaged and keep fighting.
Well said. All right.
Yep.
Well, God bless you, and thanks for being on our show today. And I look forward to further conversations and to supporting you in your campaign, because we need people like you.
Thanks, Oliver. I appreciate that.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Have a blessed weekend.
You too. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.